Broadcasting from New York City to the world, it's the G-Man Interviews.
Welcome. Michael Long is chairman of the New York State Conservative Party. He served his country in the United States Marine Corps and was honorably discharged in 1961. A volunteer for United States Senator Barry Goldwater's 1964 campaign for president, Mr. Long registered as a member of the New York State Conservative Party that same year. In 1968, he was elected as a district leader of the Conservative Party and went on to be elected chairman of the Kings County Conservative Party in 1972 and vice president of the State Conservative Party in 1974. He continued his leadership in the Conservative Party, being elected executive vice chairman in 1985 and ultimately state chairman in 1989. At the 2010 CPAC in Washington, D.C., the American Conservative Union Foundation presented the chairman with the Charlton Heston Courage Under Fire Award, and he has received several other awards for community service. He has appeared on both national and local news programs, including Crossfire, Hardball with Chris Matthews, and Inside City Hall on New York One, to name a few. He also appeared on this show earlier in the year to discuss a range of issues, including the racial tension in New York City in the wake of Eric Garner's death, and what Republicans need to do to win the White House in 2016. It's a pleasure to welcome you back to the show, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
One of the reasons I love having you on is because you're very direct and pull no punches when answering questions, which I attribute to your background as a United States Marine. And by the way, my condolences on the 4 Marines killed in Chattanooga, Tennessee this week.
Well, it was a very sad day yesterday, Gary, and just imagine how those families feel that lost their loved ones when they were probably very pleased and happy that they were out of harm's way stationed in Tennessee and wind up getting killed by this terrorist, which is a very, very, like I said, very dark day and very sad for those families.
Before you provide your assessment of the 2016 GOP presidential candidates, there's an elephant in the room that needs to be addressed. On June 22nd of this year, the New York Times published an article entitled Council of Conservative Citizens Promotes White Primacy and GOP Ties. A portion of the article stated, since it rose in the 1980s from the ashes of the old and unabashedly racist White Citizens Council, the Council of Conservative Citizens has drifted in and out of notoriety. But it is clearly back in. Last weekend, 3 Republican presidential candidates, Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, former Senator Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania, and Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, announced that they were returning or giving away donations from the council's president, Earl Holt III. Since 2011, Mr. Holt has also contributed at least $3,500 to Governor Scott Walker of Wisconsin. A spokesman for Mr. Walker said he would donate the money to the Mother Emanuel Hope Fund, which is helping families of the Charlton massacre. Mr. Holt, who did not return calls for comment, has given at least $57,000 to Republican candidates for federal and state offices. Now, Mr. Chairman, to be fair, Scott Shepard, a former national leader of the Ku Klux Klan, appeared on this show and revealed that the Council of Conservative Citizens and similar groups have donated to Democratic campaigns as well. For the benefit of those who really don't understand the world of campaign donations, can you briefly explain whether or not candidates are immediately informed of the donation, the donor, and the donor's background?
No, that's the last thing that takes place. And, candidates, it's impossible to be informed immediately who the person is, and they can't have a handle on every donor. Look, I run a political party, the New York State Conservative Party. I'm the chairman. I try to know who all our supporters are, but we're very fortunate to have quite a few small donors. We don't have big donors, but small donors. Saying that, there may be some people that have had a bad track record. I don't know that, and it's very hard for candidates to surmise that, and unless it's brought to their attention by an outside individual.
I raise this issue because I've spoken with a number of people who believe these candidates knew about the donations, but they chose to remain silent and keep the money until the story broke.
When you look at the presidential candidates, I don't care whether it's Democrat or Republican in this case, okay? The amount of donations they get on a regular basis, if they have a successful campaign going on, is just, enormous, and they can't keep up to speed on it. So it's impossible for them to know exactly who's sending the money all the time.
The last time you appeared on this show, you stated the Republican Party must do a better job of getting its message across to people of all income levels and races. Do you believe that can still be accomplished in the wake of the New York Times report I just referenced and the searing comments Donald Trump recently made about Mexicans?
I think they still can be accomplished, and I know, Gary, a lot of people use the New York Times as their Bible, but I certainly don't. If you want to talk about a paper who gets the messages wrong or consistently tilted, it would be the New York Times. I think Mr. Trump may have been inartful in the way he made his comments. I think the world has been proven that he has hit a nerve, and that the citizens of this nation are kind of frustrated and upset with open borders and seeing a young lady in San Francisco who's with her father getting shot, and and I think while his comments were before that happened, I think that incident proves that what he was alluding to is somewhat true, that people who are breaking the law, coming across the borders, and not only that, but some of them who come across the border then break the law further, as that individual who committed murder.
Okay, let's move on and talk about the GOP candidates for president. Are you happy with the current field?
I think we have a great field of candidates. Unlike the Democratic Party, which has very limited, and that's a partisan statement, and I understand that. But one of the reasons, some people complain that the field, some people on our side of the fence complain that the field is too crowded and there's too many candidates. I personally think it's a good thing that we have the amount of candidates that we have that are seeking the presidency. I don't think we've ever had such a qualified group of people that are running. I think it's also very positive because people like the New York Times and left-wing groups are not sure who they want to attack because they're not sure who's going to rise to the top. For instance, if we only had one or two candidates that were vying for the presidency, they would be pounded on a daily basis by progressives and liberals and publications like the New York Times. But because there's 16 of them, they're not sure who to go after because they're not sure who's at the end of the day is going to be left standing. So I think it buys us time. You're going to hear lots of different messages. I think it's a really positive. I think you're looking at one of them are going to rise to the top by the end of this cycle. And what you're looking at is a possibility of many, many cabinet members that are going to be now happen to be running for president right now, could also wind up becoming cabinet members. So I think it's a real positive, good group of candidates that are running. I don't agree with all of them on everything, but I think it's just a positive message that we have so many good candidates, qualified people in the mix.
I'm going to give you a name from a list of candidates, and I'd like you to give me a brief assessment of them as potential commanders-in-chief. Now, for the sake of full disclosure, there are over 31 declared candidates, meaning those that have officially entered the race. Other candidates have formed exploratory committees or are listed as probable, according to 2016 RepublicanPresidentialCandidates.org. Given his enormous surge in the polls and the fact that I've referenced him already, let's start with New York billionaire Donald Trump.
He's a very successful individual. He makes no secret about his personal wealth. He got that personal wealth through being an excellent negotiator and businessman. And I think right now he is striking a chord with thousands upon thousands of American citizens who are concerned about losing their nation, and one of the issues he has raised is illegal immigration, and he's not a political correct individual, so I think he's striking a very strong chord with a lot of people.
Jeb Bush.
Solid name recognition, certainly the son of former president, brother of a former president, was a very successful governor. He governed very well in Florida. I'm wondering if the break from his time being out of office is going to hurt him. He's clearly raising more money than any other candidate, so he's well positioned and certainly has to be considered one of the front runners.
Ben Carson.
Once again, he's another individual, I think, who has tapped into the frustration of the American people. He has made his mark as not a politician, but a surgeon, a neurosurgeon, who has spoken his mind very clearly and with a lot of common sense. So therefore, he has attracted some very solid support. Whether he can break through and hold on to be on the top tier candidate, I don't know about that yet. I think it's a little too early to tell that.
Chris Christie.
Certainly an outspoken governor from New Jersey. I think he's least likely to succeed as a candidate across the nation because of his style. Telling people to sit down and shut up doesn't work. I think would hurt him. And I think he does not appeal to conservatives, which I really clearly make up the rank and file members of the Republican Party, certainly the primary people. I think he's just not seen as conservative as any of the other candidates.
Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz, probably one of the brightest guys in the United States Senate. He clearly is a conservative intellectual. He is very bold in his point of view. He has raised a fairly decent amount of money. I think he's going to be a contender as we could go down the road here. And some people are already counting him out, but you have to remember when he ran for the United States Senate, he got into the race, he had a 2% positive name recognition, and he overcame that and became the United States Senator for Texas. So he's someone who is clearly a darling, if you want to call it that, of conservative movement, and a very sound intellectual background.
Carly Fiorina.
Great lady. I'll preface that by saying that the New York State Conservative Party recently held their annual dinner at the Sheraton. She was our featured speaker, and for about 35 minutes, you could hear a pin drop in the audience. She's a very successful lady. She has a very warm way about her. She is a solid conservative person. I know she's having trouble breaking through the top tier. My hope is that she makes it to the debates, because I think it's really important for the Republicans to have a woman sitting on that dais and a woman who can walk and talk, and she could really take Hillary Clinton on without a doubt. Hillary would be no match. She'd be the perfect person, and Hillary would really have trouble dealing with her.
Lindsey Graham.
Certainly not one of the most favorite United States senators amongst the conservative movement. He's very knowledgeable on foreign policy, but he, like Chris Christie, is not one, I think, who will capture the minds and hearts of the registered Republicans across the nation.
Mike Huckabee.
Clearly articulate. He's got fairly good name recognition because of being a former governor, running for president the last 4 years ago, having a TV show over those 4 years. But his time, I like him a lot, but his time may have passed, and he doesn't seem to be catching fire at this stage of the game. Very articulate guy, but his time just may have passed.
Bobby Jindal.
A guy who has a proven record, I think is an important voice of conservative principles. Not clear if he can raise the money to get into and stay into the top tier, but certainly has a fairly good track record. But coming from a very small state, which is and from the South, very difficult whether he can break through the top tier. But certainly, I believe if in fact in 2016, if he's not the candidate for president, if the candidate for president on the Republican line and conservative line wins the election and beats Hillary Clinton, then I think you're going to see him as a player in the administration, whoever wins.
Rand Paul.
Clearly, very, very conservative on many, many issues, well-spoken. I think one of his problems that he faces is with conservatives across the nation is his position on foreign policy. His libertarian views may be a little bit too libertarian for the general public.
George Pataki.
An old friend of mine, governor of the state of New York, met with him, I guess it's about 6-7 weeks ago, before he got into the race, and sat right here in my office, and he laid it out that he was going to get into the race. He felt very strongly that his voice would be an important voice to get into the mix. That day, we talked about what a difficult task he would have, how steep the hill was for him. So he personally understands how difficult it is for him to break through. But I can say this, being a guy who was supportive of him back in 1994, and no one knew who Senator Pataki was when he announced the run against Mario Cuomo. He's a great campaigner, and he has a lot of tenacity. But I think it's going to be very difficult for him to climb over that hill, though.
Rick Perry.
Very successful governor from a very large state. He certainly has proven his record to grow an economy. He certainly grew his state, was elected numerous times. I believe he's one of the longest-serving governors in the state of Texas.
Yes, Rick Perry was governor from 2000 to 2015.
Correct, and he that state grew in those years that he was there. It grew each and every year. Great job creator. Was not shy about traveling to New York and Jersey and California and encouraging people to come to Texas. So he has a successful track record. Whether he can raise the money or not, one of his problems would be his race 4 years ago when he made that error, responding to a question about what agencies he would eliminate. And he evidently went a little bit blank there, and he got a bad rap on that one. He admits to that, but he's not afraid to try to take a second chance on it. Now, whether he can break through or not, that's another question.
Marco Rubio.
Very articulate, young United States Senator. Has an awful lot to offer. Probably of all the candidates, he helps bridge the gap with young people. He's Hispanic, Cuban descent. Seems to be raising money pretty decently, and I believe it's enough to make him a serious contender as one of the top candidates. So coming from the same state as Jeb Bush, but coming from an important state in the election, and probably would be very helpful to the Republicans and conservatives to bring home the Hispanic vote in the general election if he's successful to become the president. So I think he's a top-tier candidate and has a good shot at possibly becoming the nominee.
Rick Santorum.
Was a good United States Senator. He's having trouble raising money this trip. I think he's having trouble breaking through. Very articulate, has a lot to offer. He certainly is a policy guy, but I'm not sure he's going to be able to pierce through to the top tier. He ran once before, okay, and did well the first time, which was 4 years ago, but he was a United States Senator who lost his race, so he couldn't carry his own state, so it may really affect him when people look at that, saying, well, he's a guy who lost his own state. and that may have taken a toll. And he, like Huckabee, his time may have passed, and I think that's what the problems he's dealing with.
And Scott Walker.
Like Mark Rubio, I think he's a top-tier candidate. I think he also is young that can bridge a little bit of the youth vote in America, make that connection. He clearly has governed well, not according to the New York Times, naturally. In Wisconsin, has done some very important things in the state and has improved education, has improved job growth, has a good track record, and seems to have nerves of steel, has good leadership qualities. The left paints him as a union buster. What he is a person who fought for individuals' freedom to work without being forced to sign the dotted line and pay union dues if they so desired not to. So if you're sitting in or standing in the shoes of a liberal, you would call him a union buster. If you're standing in the shoes of a conservative, you would categorize him as a person who stood up and fought for freedom for the workers of his state, that in fact that they didn't have to belong to a union to get a job. And I think he, like Rubio, like Jeb Bush, and not in any special order, but I think he is going to be one of the top-tier candidates. And you didn't ask me this question, but I'm telling you from my perspective at this moment, and that could change, but I believe the top-tier candidates, the three in no special order, is Rubio, Walker, and Bush. And one of those three right now, I believe, are going to wind up being a nominee, but that's subject to change also because we have a long way to go.
The first Republican presidential primary debate will take place on August 6th in Cleveland, Ohio. Is there anyone in particular that you'll be focusing on, besides New York's own Donald Trump and George Pataki?
No, not. This is the first time I can tell you I've been at this a long time. My first presidential race that I was involved in was in 1964. Since then, this is the first time that I have not, I guess you could say, signed up or already committed to or already have a favorite son in the race. And I think one of the reasons is because the field is so big. As I said earlier, I think it's a great field of candidates. It's a wealth of richness to have this many people willing to stand up and fight for the party nomination. I think that is a plus for the Republican Party, which all these candidates can attract more independent voters. I think from a partisan point of view, that's one of the problems the Democratic Party is facing. From this individual's point of view, they're stuck with Hillary Clinton, who has an awful lot of baggage, and every day you open up the papers, she seems to have more baggage. So they have a problem on that side, and I don't believe we're faced with that problem on the conservative Republican side.
I know it's still early, but at this point, whom do you consider to be the biggest threat to the GOP and why? Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders?
Hillary Clinton is the biggest threat because of her capability to raise the amount of money she has raised. The Clinton name is a very solid name politically. If she had her husband's personality, she would really be a threat to whoever the Republican Party candidate is. She doesn't have a husband's personality or characteristics, as a matter of fact. But she is really clearly the biggest threat, and I think she has a lock. While her numbers are slipping somewhat, I think she definitely has a lock on a good 45 to 47% of the electorate in the United States right now. Bernie Sanders has the enthusiastic support of the true believers, of the Democratic Party or the progressives of the nation, and he is creating a lot of excitement. I don't know if that can be transferred to her. She's going to win the nomination as of today, I believe, and I don't think the excitement that he's creating, enthusiasm he's creating, I'm not sure can be transferred to her.
And finally, complete this sentence. Now, I know you said it's too early to make a prediction or anything, but just humor me. If the election was a week from today, the Conservative Party of New York State would most likely endorse blank because.
I know you want an answer, and I'd like to give you an answer, but we have I guess you could say, an abundance of good, conservative, outstanding spokes individuals that are running for president, and it's clearly too early. And it's the first time in my life that I have not already jumped on a favorite. So I can't answer that question, and I can't humor you on that question because my sincerity is the fact that I'm very pleased with the process, and I'm very pleased. I want to see how this all pans out.
I completely understand and respect that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for joining me once again. I greatly appreciate your time.
Gary, it's a pleasure.
I'm the G-Man. And until next time, stay cool, stay safe, and stay informed.